Should we care? From the video and book, It Makes Sense to Believe. Early in 2007, scenes like this were common on television as fighting was heavy in Iraq. That's when our 17-year-old hockey-playing son wanted to join the Marine Corps infantry. To help him better understand what he was getting into, I showed him documentaries of what could happen, such as on those who had fallen or were terribly wounded. My wife knew these discussions were going on but said nothing. When the time came and I told her she would have to sign his papers, she broke down and cried. While I was narrowly focused on Charlie's decision and what was right and best, Marita was imagining that one day her son might be killed. I bring this up because suppose for a moment Christianity might really be true, that God the Father sent his only beloved Son to us, even though he knew Jesus would be tortured and killed. Now, if this is true, should we care? Images from the movie The Passion of the Christ. Given how deeply parents feel about their children, we need to reflect on how God the Father felt when Jesus was crucified and ask, why did he send his only son knowing he would be killed? It had to be for a dire reason and not just to make a speech about living a better life. Notably, the name Jesus means God saves. But saves us from what or who? According to today's polls, many college-educated Catholics do not believe in Satan, fallen angels, and hell. For those who do believe, though, the risk of damnation is one of the most disturbing and controversial topics in Christianity. That is, if there is Satan in hell, then how many people go there forever and for what reasons? And problematically, how do we reconcile endless horror and suffering with a God who is supposed to be love? But think about the clergy sex abuse scandals and how ordained men wearing Roman collars stalked their prey, had the trust of parents, and ruined their children's lives. Don't these acts cry out for divine justice? Or in the end, does everyone stroll into heaven where predators get to live next door to their victims? If Christianity is true, there is one image that persistently troubles me. It's the thought of baptized Catholics at the end of their life on earth, standing before God, the Father of Jesus crucified. But throughout their busy time on earth, they neglected and forgot Jesus. They didn't even spend a short time to seriously consider their faith might be true. How will that face-to-face encounter with God his Father go? The Father who watched his Son get nailed to a cross. Our family knows what it's like to lose a child. 5 days before Christmas 2019, Charlie called me from the emergency room. Crying, he said, "Dad, Rosie is dead. We're at St. Francis Hospital. Come down right away." Laura and Charlie's only child, our only grandchild, a perfectly healthy 2-year-old, had suddenly died. This happens to 1 in 100,000 children. When I got to them in a few hours, they walked over and sobbed into my shoulders. I stayed for a week and saw their intense suffering. On Christmas Eve, we had a family dinner at Laura's brother's home. Before it was time to eat, a few of us stood outside around a fire pit. While we stared at the warm, peaceful flames, Charlie mentioned how struck he was by the fact any of us can go suddenly, even when young and healthy. When Rosie passed, Charlie spent the next days and weeks revisiting his Catholic faith, because he had to know for sure where she was and that she was okay. He told me when Rosie was still with them, he was largely going through the motions of being a practicing Catholic, not really thinking much about his faith. Now he had to know whether his faith was true or not. After quickly reading many books, calling programs such as Catholic Answers with questions, and so forth, Charlie became convinced. What especially resonated with him was the evidence for miracles. During his research, Charlie said, "If Rosie's death was about salvation, then I can accept it," meaning God must have a very good reason to allow such suffering and injustice. As will be explained more in this video, Christianity is about the eternal drama of loving God and neighbor more than oneself. That is, doing good and not evil as God defines it. Then, as each person's life ends, there is judgment and ultimate accountability. Fortunately for us, we live in a time when it is truly easy to receive God's mercy. All we have to do is turn away from sin, attend Sunday Mass, regularly take God's words to heart, and go to confession. Then, when our last moment on earth comes, we will be able to pray with confidence as Simeon did when he held the baby Jesus in the temple. "Lord, now your servant is ready to go to you in peace." Admittedly, this is a difficult and unpopular time to believe as a Catholic, because horrible child abuse was committed by some clergy. Church sexual morality is out of sync with the culture. The Bible has been criticized for decades and so forth. Yet despite all the problems, this is also perhaps the clearest of times to believe next to standing beside Jesus during his many miracles and resurrection. Using evidence and common sense, it makes sense to believe, hopes to demonstrate why it is so reasonable to believe in God, his only beloved Son Jesus, and the church he historically established. For the rest of the program, let us quickly step through sound reasons for believing by adhering to what is most likely true. We will begin with the big picture, such as, does God exist? Then we'll zoom in to consider evidence for Christianity and the Catholic Church. Finally, with this context in mind, we will deal with controversial issues such as scandals, sexual morality, and the role of women.